My first batch of subjects arrived today, and I have to admit that I'm very excited.
Welcome back to my channel. Thanks again for the new subscribers and for the old subscribers sticking around. Really appreciate it because it's quite fun to do this and it encourages me to do it, which is cool. And I like the discussions, I like the comments and the messages people send me is cool. But today is a book haul. So the last time I did a book haul was November, so Christmas has happened. So some of these are Christmas presents, but I've also had a few book shopping trips, and I've got some really nice books that I've had over those 4 months, and some books I've mentioned in other videos. So the video 20 books for 2022, that features some of these, and actually one of the books in the Fantasy February reads that I'm doing at the moment was bought recently, which is why I chose it in a way, because it was like, this is the one that I could do for now. So I'll talk about that in a second as well. But the book haul for February.
Ooh, good monkey.
Okay, so let's start with the books that I got for Christmas or around the Christmas week, because I know we went shopping like a few days after Christmas or something like that. So some of them weren't actual presents, and some were just bought with money I got for Christmas and that kind of thing. But anyway, so I'll start with Bloody Rose. So this is Nicholas Eames' follow-up to Kings of the Wild. I absolutely loved Kings of the Wild. I did a video about Kings of the Wild when I read it, so I'm looking forward to reading this one. I've seen about that some people don't like this as much as the first one, so that would be a bit of a shame if that's a thing. But I did really like the first one. This follows up the story with more of a story around the daughter who drives the plot of the first one. But in this one, she's a principal character, and others of her generation, whereas the previous book, the first book, the main characters are a lot older. So, yeah, anyway, I look forward to reading this. If you've read this, tell me what you think. I've got another Joe Hill book, so Nosferatu. I don't know how many other videos you've seen from my channel, but I did a Halloween video, and I talked about me discovering Joe Hill when I read the Heart-Shaped Box book. So I'm looking forward to reading this one. It's a chunky one, but it looks really good, and I've heard a lot about it. Not many details, but I've heard a lot of people raving about how much they liked it. If you've read it, please tell me what you think of it. Nosferatu, Joe Hill. This was one I got for Christmas off my daughter, and I think it's a really interesting find. I didn't know anything about this, but it looks a bit kind of post-apocalyptic. Looks like the sort of thing I'd love, and maybe a little bit sort of Children of Men from what I've read in the back. So a little bit similar. I'm not sure, but anyway, look forward to reading this one. So thanks, Jess. Great present. This one I have mentioned in the 2 for 22 video, but I did get it for Christmas. He is Legend, an anthology celebrating Richard Matheson. So I'm a huge Richard Matheson fan. I've done the I Am Legend video, where I mention him in general, talk about some of the things he's done. I am going to do a Twilight Zone video at some point, at least one of those. And when I do that, I will be talking about him a bit. But I wouldn't mind doing one on his other books as well. But in the meantime, this is a really lovely anthology that celebrates him. And that mentions Joe Hill there. So he's one of the people that have contributed to this book, celebrating Richard Matheson. So I can't wait to read this one. This is another one I think I've mentioned in the 2 for 22. And that's The Troop. I got this for Christmas, Nick Cutter. So I put this on my Christmas list because I'd heard so much about it. And I wanted to read more horror as well. So this is quite a recent one. Apparently it's quite gory and grisly. But yeah, I'll see what I think. But Nick Cutter, The Troop is a new book I've got. Quite there from Mr. King. They all want that on their book, don't they? And this is another one I mentioned in the 2 for 22 video, Black Buck. Let me know if you've read this and what you think of it. It seems to me it could be a little bit similar to the film Sorry to Bother You, which, if you haven't seen it, hugely recommend it. It's one of those films that starts off setting something up and you think, okay, I can see where this is going, and then just goes completely crazy halfway through. So I don't know if that's going to be the case with this book. It might only be that the similarity is the general kind of social commentary in it and the comments it makes about racism and stuff. But yeah, I look forward to reading this one. If you've read this, let me know. So I didn't get this one for Christmas. This one's one I ordered online. I think this one, I saw Willow from Books and Bao talking about this one, I think. So this is from a really popular South Korean author. It's a science fiction book of 4 stories that are linked. I think 2 of them are linked closely together, and then there's a general link that links the 4 stories together. It looks really interesting, and I need to read this really soon because I bought this, very excited about having it. I've got such a huge TBR, but I want to read this one soon. So if you've read this, please let me know what you think of it. But if this wasn't recommended by Books and Bao, Willow from Books and Bao, I think it was, but if it wasn't, this one definitely was. Where is it? No Longer Human. Osamu Dazai, No Longer Human. This is something that Willow talked about in the Books and Bao channel. And the way they described it, it seemed to be really interesting and quite different. So I gave that a go. It was had a little. It was part of a. It was part of a separate display. You know, like bookshops have some separate displays of things they recommend on the table. And I looked at it and I thought, oh yeah, I remember Willow talking about this. So I thought I'd give it a go. If you've read this, please let me know. But this is one of several books in translation that I'm going to be reading soon that I've bought recently. So No Longer Human looks really interesting. And on that note, again, this is an author that I know Willow's talked about on their channel, and that's Kawakami, Hiromi Kawakami. I've got 2 of their books now, Strange Weather in Tokyo and The 10 Loves of Mr. Nishino. And they look quite interesting, quite different, but I'm not really sure what to expect. It was quite nice, but these are books that I couldn't resist. Partly because the covers are and the way it's got it designed, just very appealing. But just seemed to be a little bit different. And one of the things about reading books in translation sometimes, the approach to the characters and the general message is quite different. So I do find it's quite an interesting thing to kind of delve into someone else's culture and discover a new way of looking at relationships. So you get that with watching films from different countries in different ways as well, but I think that's definitely true for literature as well, of course. It was quite an interesting experience reading a book by Mishima recently, and I wanted to kind of delve a little bit more into different cultures like that. So that was my motivation for buying those. So if you've read any of these 2, Strange Weather in Tokyo and The 10 Loves of Mr. Nishino, let me know. Thank you, Willow, for your extensive reviews on these kind of things. Another booktuber I'll mention, actually. Where is it? Where's it gone? There it is. So this is one I'm pretty sure Rachel from Shades of Orange introduced me to, The Missing by Sarah Langan. So again, this was my attempt to read more horror, and I bought this one online because it's really difficult to find. It's not on the Waterstones website. I did look in the shop first because I do want to support shops, but it wasn't in a shop, and I had to buy it online from eBay, I think it was. But yeah, so it's quite a rare one, it seems. It might be more available in America, I'm not sure. But anyway, I know Rachel from Shades of Orange mentioned this, and it does look like really kind of compelling, gripping, scary, horrific, all those kind of things. So I thought I'd give this a go, so see what happens there. I bought this one myself, but I can't remember where or when. I think it was Waterstones, but I can't remember. But Murakami's Windup Bird Chronicle, another book that I've heard a lot about. This might be the first one I'm going to read, because I have got another one which looks interesting, but looks possibly... This might be a better entry into Murakami stuff, I'm not sure. But anyway, the Windup Bird Chronicle I finally have, which is a book I've heard a lot about. As I was saying about that idea about reading books in translation and different cultures and different approaches to writing and to different approaches to observing as well, this is a book that looks like it's a short book, a kind of a typical kind of classics thing where it's about people watching and musings and philosophical ideas about what people are like, I think. I'm trying to go in fairly blind with this. Mr. Pullover by Calvino looks like a really interesting find. and I'm looking forward to reading this. It won't take me long, it's very short, but it could be quite a different kind of book. So if you've read this, please let me know what you think of it. But yeah, this was one I wanted to read, just that idea of kind of getting different types of books in my experience, and maybe I can delve a little bit more into this kind of thing if I like it. But yeah, I'll see what I think of that.
Nope. Wrong. Guess again.
And then just, this is a little bit of a moment where I was in a charity shop and I found these and I couldn't resist them, but I haven't actually read a full book by this guy. I've already got one book that is called, what's it called? Gangster Rap, I think it's called Gangster Rap. And I was going to read that soon, but I found these other three, so now I'm like, which book do I read first? But I've seen him a lot in interviews, and I've seen his poetry and read his poetry, and I do think he's a really interesting guy. Benjamin Zephaniah. And these three books I found really cheap, and I couldn't resist them. So you got Teacher's Dead, Face, and Refugee Boy. If you read these, please let me know what you think. But I know Benjamin Zephaniah is an interesting guy with a lot of really cool things to say about race and the way that we relate to each other. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to reading these as well. Right, I'm going to get quite pulpy in a minute, but a couple of other ones before I get all pulpy. I have no idea what this is going to be like. It was literally 20p, I think it was, and it's beautiful condition. It's called Hitler's Canary, and it's by Sandi Toksvig. So I really like Sandi Toksvig. I think she's really cool, very funny, and seemingly very intelligent and very charismatic, blah, 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 blah. I've no idea what her writing is. I know she writes a lot of farces and comedy plays and that kind of thing. But yeah, I imagine this is quite light-hearted, but probably with a bit of a bite to it. But anyway, Hitler's Canary, it's a great title. It's Sandi Toksvig. It was 20p. It could be really good. I don't know. Do you have an opinion about Sandi Toksvig? Throw it at me if you do. Okay, two more books before I get really pulpy or a bit more, or a bit less serious. And the Mosquito Coast, I found. I was really pleased to see this. I saw this in a new bookshop that's just opened up, a new second-hand bookshop, and I absolutely love the film. Really love the film. It's my favourite Harrison Ford performance, and I've got real kind of treasured memories of going to a London cinema. First time I'd ever been in the cinema in London, and it was just really kind of a special day, and I love London. But anyway, I saw this film. It really is a phenomenal film. I haven't seen it in years, actually. I need to see it again. But I want to read this, and I might read this and then watch the film again, because it'd be nice to read it kind of where it's relatively vague in my head and not remembering it, and I'm not remembering the film like word for word, so that'd be quite cool. And Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. This is a really famous book that I heard a lot about a few years ago when I was working in a bookshop. People came in and bought this a lot and kept asking about it. This is Jonathan Safran Foer. I might have said it wrong. But this is a real sort of important book that came out at the time, and I bought this knowing that I don't want to know too much about the narrative of it and the characters and that kind of stuff. I want to just go in relatively blind, but I do know it's highly acclaimed and a book that I should read, so I'm looking forward to reading that one. That was one I bought with some money I had from Maudstones as well. Okay, so just to start off with the pulpy side of stuff, the more adventurous pulpy side of things, we might as well start with somebody who kind of invented that kind of thing, or one of the inventors of that kind of thing. The Lost World, Arthur Conan Doyle. Arthur Conan Doyle, Lost World. So this is part of the February fantasy books I'm reading. I'm going to do a review on this soon. I'm enjoying it, so I didn't have a clue what I think about the writing style, because this is the first Conan Doyle book I've read. I've bought a couple of Sherlock Holmes books, but I hadn't got around to them yet. So this is my first delve into Conan Doyle, and I'm really enjoying it. So, yeah, we'll see what I think when I've finished. Yeah, I'm enjoying that. But I'm on chapter 3, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I've now got Clive Barker's first 3 books of Blood. So I was... this kind of went onto my radar. To be fair, I just found it in that second-hand bookshop, but I was encouraged by it from some recent videos from Ollie in Criminology. So he might be watching this. So hi, Ollie, if you're watching this. This was something that I did know about these, but I've never read them, and I've never read any Clive Barker. I've bought 2 others, like something about a Laurel Canyon murder is one of them, Hollywood Canyon or something. I can't remember what it's called. And I've got Cabal as well, but now I've got the Books of Blood, so now I don't know where to start with Clive Barker, but maybe Ollie can make a comment about that. But I've got the first 3 books, so hopefully I'll enjoy these. But again, I want to delve a little bit more into horror stuff. And he's one of the kind of big names in horror. And he was a big name when I was a teenager, so there was a good mate of mine, Paul, who was really into his stuff. So, yeah, hopefully I like the Books of Blood. Another book that, again, I was encouraged to get this through. My daughter is about to teach her students about this book, and that's The Wasps Factory, Ian Banks. So I've got some Ian M. Banks books that I haven't read either yet, the culture novels. I've got a load of those, almost all of them, I think, but I still haven't read them yet, so I've literally bought them on reputation when I found them cheap. It gets studied at A-level a lot, so it's seen as a very important book to be taken apart and picked at and analysed, and I'd love to know exactly what I think of it and why it's so good. So The Wasp Factory, Ian Banks, I now own. This is a big chunky one. This is a book I've known about for a long time, but I've never had it. I don't think I've ever had any Jack Vance at all, but he was a big name, certainly when I was little, he was a big name in fantasy. So I'll have to have some time set aside for reading this, but I do want to read this. So this is the Tales of the Dying Earth book. So, again, if you know Jack Vance's stuff and you've read it, please let me know. But I'm looking forward to delving into what I imagine is kind of traditional epic fantasy, but we'll see. Again, from that bookshop, still talking about epic fantasy, that sort of the cliched stuff. I'm a huge fan of Adrian Tchaikovsky, really like his stuff, and I found these, which is book 4 and book 3 of the Shadows of the Apt series. But you know, when you find them really cheap, you've got to do that sometimes, so this could be a real bargain. So at some point when I get to that point, and I've read some of the other ones I've got by Tchaikovsky, I will seek out the first book. If I like the first book, then I'll be really pleased I found these 2 cheap. If I don't like the first book, then clearly that was a mistake. But yeah, I do like his stuff, so I'm hoping I'll really like that. There's a trilogy, a fantasy trilogy that I've already bought by him that I'm looking forward to reading. So I'll probably read that before I read these. Well, I think he started in fantasy, and then obviously he's getting a big name in science fiction thanks to genius books like Children of Time. I mention that a lot because it's such a great book. But yeah, if he started in fantasy, that's probably his first love. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask him one day. And again, that thing about finding books cheap and then ending up getting different ones in the series. I've bought 2 more Dresden Files books. So I've bought Deadbeat and Small Favour, but I'm not at that point. So I haven't even read book 2 yet. I've read the first one, I really liked it. So I know I like the series. And I've got 2 and 3. I might have 4. I might have 5. And these are like 8 and 13 or something. I'm not sure. So it gets a bit random. But, you know, like I said, if I do like the series, then it's good to pick up these bargains when you see them, I think. So 2 more Dresden Files books. Okay, I've raved quite a lot about Yahtzee Croshaw on this channel because of We'll Save the Galaxy for Food and We'll Ruin the Planet for Money or something. There's a sequel. I've got that as well, which was an amazing surprise find when I found that. That was really cool. But I didn't expect to find this, so that was really good. A really good find in that secondhand shop. So I've got Mog World, which I think is his first novel, and it's a bit of a sort of meta parody of gaming and gamers, I think. But I'm looking forward to reading this. So Yahtzee Croshaw, I like everything I've read by him so far. So I'm looking forward to Mog World. Really pleased I've seen this. The Dirty Streets of Heaven, I found this around the time that I was deciding on which of the 4 books I was going to read for this fantasy month. This looks like, Dirty Streets of Heaven looks like a book based around angels influencing humans with a bit of an apocalyptic edge to it, it seems. But I don't really know. Again, I kind of got a little bit of a feel of it from the back. It was going really cheap. and I thought I might use it for the urban fantasy choice in the fantasy series thing we're doing. But I just thought I'd give it a go, and if I read the back and found out loads about it, it might spoil the narrative. So I thought go in relatively blind, but it seems to be a book about angels and how they affect some situation that's happening on real Earth. Another example of seeing something cheap and going in and getting it before you finish the previous books. I've got book 3 of this First Law trilogy, and I haven't got book 2. So I'm expecting to like the first book, The Blade itself. Haven't read it yet, but I'm expecting to like it. So if I do like it, I'll be pleased that I found this cheap, the third one, and I'll obviously order the second one at some point. I do see all of them in the bookshops all the time, actually, so I could just, get support a shop. I like the fact that bookshops exist. I don't know how you feel about the bookshops versus online thing, but I do want bookshops to stick around. So, I'd like to get the second book from one of those if I can. It's not a bad condition one. The actual condition's fine, but it looks from the side a bit. Oh, there's a bookmark in there as well. Simpsons bookmark. Thank you, whoever kept that in there when they donated the book. But anyway, so it's all right condition, just a little bit old, but condition's good. The Last Argument of Kings, the third book in the First Law trilogy. I've got no idea how consistent the Hard Case Crime series is in general. I've read 2 of the Stephen King ones, and I bought a couple of other cheap ones I've found, and I found another one going cheap called Bust. And I don't tend to read a lot of crime novels, but I do like Stephen King ones, and I thought I'd delve into it, and I found it's quite cheap, and it's one of the same series. I'm hoping it's good. Maybe Ollie's read this. Have you read this, Ollie? It's called Bust by Ken Bruin and Jason Starr, and it's got a tagline, "Secrets can kill." Ollie, if you've read this, out of anyone that might be watching this, I figure you've probably read this. I don't know. But yeah, this was one that I found quite cheap, and I like the series. I like the size as well. It's quite nice having a little pulpy novel to read. Little story of probably no consequence. But yeah, it could be interesting. A little darker, a little deeper, a little more acclaimed. I now have Shoots on the Beach. So this was one that I wanted to kind of develop my experience, understanding, knowledge of post-apocalyptic stuff. And I'm looking forward to reading this because I just think it's probably up my street. So it's brand new. I bought it new. And can't wait to read this. If you've read this, please let me know what you think. But if I do read this, it'll probably be like my, 10th or 12th post-apocalyptic book. So I'd like to do like a 5 recommended books kind of video on that sort of thing soon. But I wanted to read this and a couple of others before I make that decision on what I think are my favourites and that kind of thing. But On the Beach, have you read this? Let me know. I don't tend to go for historical fiction because a lot of historical fiction I see around seems to be Tudor based. But I do love The Plague. I love The Black Death, the first original and best plague. And Hurdy Gurdy is a book I found which is set in 1349, I think. 1340. Yeah, it's set in 1349. Yeah, this looks like a little bit light-hearted, a light-hearted book about the Black Death. The bottom of the back says an uproarious and uplifting novel about sickness and health, and how perhaps we're never quite as cutting edge as we might like to believe. But anyway, this looks intriguing, and I'm looking forward to reading this one. If you've read this, let me know. If you think I need to read more books set in a plague, especially the Great Plague, the Black Death, when that wiped out a third of Europe. Unbelievable. Also, clearly this is lighthearted, and I've heard a lot about this, but haven't read any of the series yet, and that's Robert Asprin's Mything Persons. Bit of fun, could be good, and might be a nice one to read. If I like it, I'll buy the rest of them. Mything Persons. If it makes me laugh or smile, that's all good. That's all that matters, isn't it, in a book like this? So we'll see. I imagine it's a bit sort of Robert Rankin-y. Probably, I don't know if it's very Terry Pratchett-y, because I think Terry Pratchett's got a specific style. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but comic fantasy, there's not that much of it around. But even though there's not that much of it around, Terry Pratchett's quite different to the others, I think. I've read a lot of Tom Holt as well, and Tom Holt is really good and seems to enjoy the farcical elements, enjoys mixing up plots a lot and making it as silly as possible, which is good. Silly is a positive word in my book. You read my last book that I wrote, quite silly in places. So this might be more like that, I don't know. But I think Terry Pratchett's a little bit more cerebral humour, I'd say. So not as much laugh out loud kind of humour, from my experience anyway. And I do like Terry Pratchett a lot, but his stuff is more kind of wry and makes you smile and makes you think, yeah, I like this is funny, and it just kind of gives you a light, fluffy feeling when you're reading it, rather than just silly one-liners and stupid things happening. This one I bought because I like the format of it. This is set at a bookshop, and it seems to be seemingly, from what I can gather from the way it's laid out, because this is literally what sold it to me, the way it's laid out. I haven't read any of it yet, but its layout seems to be lots of short kind of essay type things. So it seems to be kind of fictionalized non-fiction, if that makes sense. And it's about the experience of working in a bookshop, I think. And it's all themed. And basically, I'm trying to get together a plan for how I'm going to write my next book, which is going to be based around my experience of working in a record shop. I want to create a narrative around the characters in it, but I also want it to be not like a normal beginning, middle, end narrative for a novel. I don't want it to be just that. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to lay it out. And this is quite an interesting thing that I think is going to be an influence on that. So we'll see. I've already started notes and I've started writing little bits of this book I'm going to write, but I'm not happy with it yet. I'm not convinced that I know where I'm going with it yet. So I'm going to keep playing around with it, but I'll see if this helps me out. So The Bookseller's Tale, let me know if you've read that by Martin Latham. It looks really interesting, and I love the cover. It's a very awesome cover. At some point, I want to write a sequel to The Brown Yelp Gang. So it's a book I'm very proud of. I think it's funny. I think it's a very funny book, but I also love the characters. I enjoyed writing it, and I want to write a sequel. I've already written the plot for it, and I've broken it down into chapters. I know what I want to do with it, but I feel like I'd like to have a little bit more experience before I write the next one. And I also have to read the first one again so I can really get consistent with what I'm talking about with the characters and that kind of thing. But I found another book about writing. So this was another charity shop find, so it was quite cheap, but it's also something that should do me a lot of good. So I don't know if I'm going to end up writing fantasy, but I definitely want to keep writing science fiction. And I know I've got a lot to learn on that front. But I've written 2 novels now and the book of short stories that I started with. And, you know, I'm new at it and I'm sure I'll get better. I know I've got better anyway, because I know my last one is much more accomplished than the first book of short stories. I do know that. But you're always growing, aren't you? And you always hope to get better as you go along. So this book might have good influence on me on that one. If you've read this or you know about it, please let me know. It's got it's basically different people writing about writing. So it's got stuff by Orson Scott Card, Philip Athens, Jay Lake, the editors of Writer's Digest, and I think they cover different aspects of writing in it. So could be really interesting. And then 2 more to finish. I have found a lovely book, which I can't wait to get into, which is the Annotated Alice. So I'm a huge fan of Alice in Wonderland. I'm going to read the Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass books again, because I'd like to do a video on them, because I really do love those books. And the Annotated Alice looks like a really interesting addition to my knowledge and opinions about the book. So I'm going to read that as well. Lewis Carroll, great mind. So the Annotated Alice, that was a really nice find. Again, a charity shop thing, so I wouldn't have known about that book otherwise. That was cool. Then one last one to finish off. So when I first started this channel, I think my first ever proper booktube video, quite a while ago now, was a book about cartoonists, because I've collected cartoonist books for a long time, and I've got 4 or 5 particular favourites. My 2 all-time favourites are probably Charles Addams and Gayne Wilson. So Gayne Wilson's books are really hard to find. They are very expensive. This was very expensive. It's very short and small. It's a tiny little thing, but it was quite expensive because it's hard to get hold of them. And The Weird World of Gayne Wilson is a new one to add to my collection. So I absolutely love the fact that I now have a new one to add to my collection. So I thought it'd be a nice way to finish this book haul video, because Gayne Wilson books are so rare. And check him out if you don't know him stuff. He's kind of a macabre, creepy cartoonist who likes to do weird jokes, often based around horror tropes or horror characters, that kind of thing. Check him out if you don't know him. So there we go. So some of those are Christmas presents. There was a few that I didn't actually repeat again. I've already mentioned, like the XTC book and the Kate Bush book that I talked about in the 22 books of 22, which I got for Christmas. But some of these were Christmas presents, but some of them are books that I found in between the last book haul and now. And please comment if you've read these books. I like watching book haul videos because you find out other books you didn't know about, or some people might say the odd thing that might pique your interest, that might tweak your interest in reading it. So if I've done that for you guys watching it, then that's great. But if it's all stuff that either you don't care about or you've already read, please let me know what you thought of them. And thanks again for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and like the videos. And see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.